Welcome to Voice of the Retail Revolution webinar event, Fact or Fiction, What You Need to Know About Physical Retail. We at Brookfield Properties are curating conversations with the most forward-thinking leaders, from CEOs to analysts, to bring to light the latest trends, understand how our ever-changing industry is evolving, discuss the challenges that new technologies present, and rethink how high-quality retail real estate can best be used to meet the needs of local communities. I'm Hannah Call, Manager of Retailer Partnerships at Brookfield Properties, and it's my pleasure to host you today. Have you heard the familiar narrative? Another retailer shrinks their brick and mortar footprint. E-commerce is the way forward, or physical is too expensive. These are some of the prominent headlines occupying the narrative of the retail community today. But have these theories been tested? Are they proven? What should brands consider for the future of their store strategies when the pandemic caused a surge in e-commerce sales? Today, we will cover the topics that the media and industry are not talking about, but should be. Let's play fact or fiction with two industry experts who will answer looming questions to demystify the future of retail. I'm pleased to welcome our guest panelist for today, retail expert, founder and CEO of Coresight Research, Deborah Weinswig, along with our very own Senior Vice President of Business Intelligence and Strategy at Brookfield Properties, Meredith Darnall. Today, we will cover topics from pent-up consumer demand to physical space as a community hub. Nothing is off limits. You have questions, we have answers. Let's dive in. Meredith, let's start with you. With the unpredictable shift in consumer behavior, exponential growth in e-commerce sales, and large retailers filing for bankruptcy due to the global pandemic, how are you seeing the landlord-tenant relationship shift?
It's such a great question, Hannah, because I think traditionally there's always been this slightly adversarial relationship between the landlord and tenant. We were two opposing views on different sides of a negotiation. And now what we're really seeing is that if we come and bring a partnership between the landlord and tenant, there really are mutual benefits for all. And we see this shift really changing and driving some key ways in which we can partner with our retailers. So first is we are seeing a shift to more data sharing between landlords and tenants, because it's going to have a myriad of potential evolutions. So we know that consumers really demand a more personalized, holistic shopping experience. So by sharing data, we can really bring better insights to create localized strategies across both our centers and within the retail brands themselves. So we're seeing through data sharing that retailers have an opportunity to improve operations and grow profit, and that we can partner to make the back of the house fulfillment really more efficient to drive increased sales and margin for our retailers. And, I may have a little bit of bias, but I think as large institutional owners, we are very well positioned to do this, because the scale of our portfolio here at Brookfield Properties, as well as the scope of our geography, we can really bring strategic insights that span the whole country that are driving both macro strategies as well as micro strategies as well. I also see that the relationship is changing because both owners and retailers are really seeking to better engage and entertain the consumer and really personalize the experience. Everybody comes to their favorite local center to shop their stores and really have the experience that they know, that makes them feel comfortable, makes them feel indulgent. And so we're really seeing an opportunity to partner to bring this experience out of each individual store, but really see it across the entire center itself. And the way we're able to do this now is through technology. So technology isn't just really the solution, it's what is enabling this difference in this more personalized store experience. So it's interesting in recent research that we've seen in technology-enabled stores, the retailers were able to increase consumers' browse time twice of what occurs in a non-tech enabled store. And more importantly, they saw margin increase 3 to 5 points. So this isn't about creating experience for the sake of experience. It's really driving profit to both our retail brands and bringing the benefit into the center. So there's a myriad of technologies and way we can think about reimagining that in-store experience. And Deb, I know that you spend so much of your time thinking about this too. So I'm curious for your thoughts. Like, what are you seeing in terms of strategies that are using technology to enable store formats or really personalize the shopping experience?
It's interesting, Meredith, and thanks again, Hannah, for this opportunity. idea around loyalty is increasingly important, and it's interesting. It's at the individual store, but also this idea, right? The mall as a platform. So the individual malls also having this kind of loyalty aspect is really critical. And not only does it increase, kind of as you even highlighted, dwell time, but number of retailers visited, also, kind of other activities that one might engage in a mall. And also right now where we're all really, feeling this desire for community, that one can have this sense of community at a mall, but it's through, loyalty, gamification around loyalty. So that's, I would say, number one. Number two, at Coresight, we kind of put together this core AI framework, and we've seen that play out in where retailers have invested over the past 12 months, which is, been so much greater than we ever expected. And depending on what retailer you talk to, right, they took 10 years and condensed it into 10 weeks, 5 years and 5 months, but you get the idea that everything's accelerated, and that at the board level now, they're getting kind of the permission to spend. So if we look at this core framework, right, it's, kind of communication. So, this idea, as you mentioned, Meredith, around personalization, but also while consumers are shopping, this idea of almost like a voice assistant to kind of shop with them and help them, and even kind of, reaching out to the crowd to say, is this something I should buy or not, or, kind of thumbs up, thumbs down, or, kind of pass or purchase. And then secondly, the O is optimized pricing, and, understanding, right, when you're in a physical environment, who your competitors are. And I mean, hey, these days, right, obviously everybody can pull out their phone. In fact, about 2/3 of people do when they're in a physical store. So just understanding, right, for this idea around, if you will, convenience, right, to buy it then, or does the consumer want to think about, waiting until tomorrow or the next day to kind of save on the price. Third is this rationalization of inventory. So as we've all seen in the past year, right, there were challenges around kind of enough product in the right size and the right color at the right time. And if you don't have it in store, right, can you get it to the customer in 2 hours? Is there a quick window, right? Is it at another store? How can you fulfill their needs? Because they're typically coming into the store to either make a better purchase decision so that they don't return the item, or they need it, that night or that day, et cetera. And then the E, right, the E in core is experiential retail. So new ways to engage, discover, buy, and pay. And I think that, to me, is where we're really seeing a big emphasis now that we're kind of entering the second year of the pandemic, which is, there's a lot, as somebody who typically spends much of my time outside the US, right, where QR codes are just kind of how business is done, we're seeing this, significant increase in QR codes. And that's a way for the consumer at point of purchase to get more information, but also to pay and to engage, right? And we're seeing this is just, to me, this like gateway has just been open, Meredith, in terms of where the QR code can go and how that can play into this kind of idea of mall as a platform, not only engagement, but also loyalty and, communicating between customer, retailer, landlord. And I think we're just beginning. I mean, there's definitely other things around AR and VR, and, the technologies are, kind of endless right now, and what we're seeing with regards to computer vision. But those are just a few. This would be a whole entire conversation if we wanted to dig deeper. So I don't know. I mean, how do you think about things on the loyalty side, and what are you seeing?
It's really interesting. I think one thing that the pandemic has really demonstrated to us is the importance of stores, right? Physical stores the importance of them have become magnified for successful retail strategies, and how retailers are really understanding loyalty is not driven by points anymore. It's really driven by, can I deliver this seamless, holistic experience across both physical channels and digital assets? Because the consumer is pretty agnostic, right? They don't really care how they acquire it. They know they want that item. And if Sephora is the brand that can best deliver it, how do they start to engage their consumers? And so it's been interesting to see that our retailers are starting to create communities in which their consumers can engage and have a dialogue with one another as well as with the brand. And then how we can start to interact to bring that experience of that brand to the local center to be part of that dialogue. It's really shifted how we are seeing consumers drive loyalty and what it means. I think loyalty is becoming much more about emotional engagement, both with brand and with center. And we look at our venues as serving the community. They serve both our retail brands that are housed inside. They also serve the consumers outside. So how do you start to drive that sense of community to bring that engagement and bring that loyalty? So I think it's interesting because, again, there's so many solutions that we can use to connect the consumer in terms of how we use technology, but it really is the experience that they're having. It has to be personal. It has to be engaging with both the brand and the center itself to drive real meaning. That's the expectation. So I loved hearing how you framed that our boards are now giving retailers permission to make these investments, because we're seeing that on the ownership side as well. We are getting, looking at how we are using our capital and really spending that across our centers now in a way that drives that engagement and brings more, I call it stickiness of both consumers and brands to our centers. They want to be within this Brookville property because it's delivering this experience that is really authentic to what they want to see.
Also, people just want to be around other people, right? I mean, that's the thing. And like, where better to do that than the mall, and to eat with your friends and to try new things and to, I've been in malls recently. Actually, I was in one. It was funny. And they had like a Zen, like basically you would like basically pop yourself into like a pod. And I'm like, these are things, I would never, and I like to dream big, but I never would have thought, right, from like a mall perspective. And it goes back to like this whole like live, work, play, right? To me, right, the malls are, and if people maybe the offices, maybe they've gotten used to this, like working at home, not having a long commute. Why can't they work at the mall and then drop their kids off at daycare and then grab their lunch and then shop afterwards? To me, right, the way that this all comes together in the future, physical stores as well as, kind of mall platforms are taking on other functions that allow customers to live their lives in different ways and to also, kind of think differently about the future of engagement. And one, as I sat back in the past few months and thought very futuristically about what's ahead, and somebody who's been passionate about live streaming, we ourselves at Coresight have brought many US or Western retailers to China, have helped them with live streaming. We've done a lot of work here in the United States as well now. If we look at the numbers, live streaming in China this year is expected to be about a $300 billion industry and about $11 billion in the US. But 11 billion is big, right? If we think about it. But to me, where we've seen the greatest success in China is live streaming in a mall, live streaming in a store. And the idea is, right, you can show, first of all, the customer can come in if they're local and meet the live streamer, which, right, they have their own, even if it's a store associate, which is what we encourage, right? They're now starting to get kind of this, star-studded, kind of KOL, influencer, creator status. And if you can like ask somebody directly, okay, how pink is that shoe? Like, I want like a hot pink shoe. Oh, it's light pink. What do you have? Right. Somebody can literally run into the back and bring it out. And that's why it's important to do this in a store setting, because it gives the consumer this idea that, and, how wide is it? Can you measure it? And, other aspects around, I'm just talking about footwear, right? That you can even like, and this KOL, this influencer could literally like walk around the store and pull items off to better satisfy. And once again, we're very focused on reducing returns, right, from a sustainability perspective. And I think that what we see is when the consumer purchases in a physical store, returns are half. And if you think about those numbers, why would we not encourage every man, woman, and child to shop in physical retail so that we really, that's a very easy first step towards the sustainability. And it's just about going to the mall where you're going to have a great time anyways.
Absolutely. I really love what you're saying too about that experience in store. I feel like, again, there's all this talk about e-commerce is the way of the future. Everybody will shift online. And even when all physical stores were closed in April and May because of capacity, like restrictions with the pandemic, you didn't see that. You definitely saw traffic to websites grow, but it's not as if they could really fulfill all the sales. As soon as stores were able to reopen, people came back because there is something about being in person, touching an item that is really meaningful and is driving transactions and conversion, but also more profitable conversion, because to your point, we're not having returns and we're also seeing additional buy. Online, I might buy that one item that I need because I just need to get it. I don't have the experience of being in the store and seeing how this particular shoe can start to help dress me head to toe, and I can pick all the pieces that come with it. And that is so key. And so we have seen consumers want to return to the physical stores and into our centers to have that experience, and their expectations are changing. So to your point, they want to connect with associates when they can. And live stream has been great, especially for some of our tourism properties where that consumer couldn't come on an everyday basis. Like we didn't get to take our vacations this year, but we're able to offer a way that you could still have that experience of shopping at Ala Moana Center, despite not being able to physically be there and keep that engagement. I think it's even more important too, to realize like buy online, pick up in store, curbside pickup, virtual queuing, all of these services that were growing prior to the pandemic, but as you mentioned earlier, have really accelerated and now are becoming the expectations of the consumer. We have to offer them, but the physical store is the real key to that. It is so important as the platform that really enables the benefit of these services to the consumer. And it's really driving better margins when we're able to use BOPUS and curbside, and we're not tacking on additional shipping costs and paying those surcharges. We're not having the packaging that we have to ship the box there and then deal with the returns on the way back. So it's really, I think what's been really interesting in the last few months is when we look at retailers who successfully balanced that in-store experience with their sort of digital investment, what they've really benefited and seen great success. And I'm thinking about like a Dick's Sporting Goods, who really sort of moved quickly to accelerate and put these in-store capabilities in, and it's driving their digital sales, it's maintaining their margin, but they're using their store fleet to enable it. So I think it's kind of interesting how retailers are really starting to come back, even digital native retailers like a Peloton. Their CEO in their first quarter earnings call of 21 said, we're going to continue to invest in stores. They offer great exposure for our product, even though we're still ordering the product and waiting for it to be delivered to our home. So I'm excited about now what these sustained changes kind of mean and how we can better engage consumers in that physical shopping experience.
Well, it's interesting what you talked about with Dick's. We had the distinct honor to interview the CEO at CS, and there was so much talk about loyalty, right? Mm-hmm. And what the physical stores, but also curbside and, kind of BOPUS. It was interesting. I had ordered a bike. I was one of the lucky ones who got a bike on Black Friday from Dick's, and going to pick it up. It was unbelievable. I chose to go in store, and I mean, they couldn't have and while I was waiting, right, I got to talk to an associate. Actually, I got to hear his whole life story and how, he had a scholarship canceled and how Dick's came in to support him. And I was like, it changed how I thought about the store. It changed how I thought about their associates. And then I got all these loyalty points, and, and he was walking through, he's like, you can do this with your points, you can do that. And so he was utilizing this time to also tell me more about the program. One other point I wanted to pick up, you mentioned kind of Ala Moana. I have spoken to so many people who typically, right, over winter break, go to Hawaii, and that's kind of one of the, important aspects. And they said, even though, right, I'm not traveling to Hawaii this year, I still can go to Ala Moana, right? And so there's this whole way of connecting with the center, which I think people used to identify themselves as, right, I'm a blank retail customer, right? Because also all these retailers had their own credit cards. I think what we're seeing out of this pandemic, Meredith, is a major change that consumers are identifying themselves as shoppers of a center. And I also think that what we're starting to see, right, as, people, as you and I talked about before this call, right, travel is going to be, well, it's already off the charts for spring break and will, I think, accelerate through the summer, that there's a lot of focus around the center that they're going to visit to purchase something on their trip. Because, we were talking about, Hannah, as well with you, these are the mementos you have, right? These are your memories, right? When I took this trip, I went to the center and I bought that. I don't think you can replace that easily. And I think everyone wants to have those shared memories, but a lot of it takes place in a center.
I think that's really interesting. And it kind of sparked a question on my side, Deb, as you were speaking about that engagement. There is that emotional engagement that we have, this desire to really return to some sort of normalized activities, the things that make us happy. So I'm curious, because there's been so much talk about pent-up demand. What does pent-up demand look like? What does that mean? But I think in the articles that I've read, it's all talked about in terms of transactions, conversions, sales. But is there something else that really leads to pent and is going to drive consumer behavior that really is a more emotional side of that pent up demand. And so talking about wanting to go have this special experience sparked that question. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts as you look at pent up demand coming soon?
Well, there's a few things. So number one, right, Coresight has been running a weekly proprietary survey, actually in the US and in China. So it's been very interesting to see kind of since the beginning of the pandemic, like March 1st, what we saw. And the greatest percentage was almost 2/3 of respondents had said that they were going to keep their kind of behaviors. And that's now fallen to below 50%. So this idea, right, that consumers, right, where they thought they were going to behave in one way, they're behaving in another. And that's number one. Number two, this idea that we've all thought about, what we want to like buy and where we want to go and how we want to kind of engage with people. And then lastly, I think that this idea that the center is a form of entertainment is continuing to grow, and that, not only kind of inside, but outside in the parking lot, right? And one last thing, Meredith, this idea around BOPUS and curbside, and I think, Hannah, you've talked about this as well, is to me, right, when I think about, like my parents, like they would have loved to have had like this opportunity to just like, drive up and like, if they weren't feeling well that day, not, you could stay in like your pajamas there. Hey, many of us are wearing our pajamas all the time now, but, this idea that you can, the center is there for you however you want it. And if you've got like, a car full of kids, right, to be able to do curbside. But I actually think, so this is my futurist in me, that, and maybe it's coming to a Brookfield property near you this holiday season. But if I could, right, book time with it could just be whether it's a personal shopper or just somebody at the center who knows me and cares about me, but I get to know, and I can book a time. So let's say it's 2:00 on Tuesday, and I'm going to go pick up my items from them. And maybe I'll look at them. Maybe I'll like try things on, one of my kids in the car, something like that. And then I can keep what I want and immediately like give back. It's not even hitting my credit card, but it makes it fast. Or if like I need to buy a gift for somebody and somebody has like, I can go into like a special location. They've got 5 gifts. I need to make a quick decision. They can wrap it. They can put a bow on it. And by the time I finish, like, kind of having lunch, it's ready to go. I just think that there's so many ways. We've done a lot of work with some centers outside the US, and there's definitely a willingness and this kind of excitedness almost on like, what is the future? Because I think the future is in person. We've all realized that. We don't want to just sit there on our phones, or at least if we're sitting on our phones, we want to be together on our phones, right? And so I think that is, to me, that's what's a lot different coming out. And I know, Hannah, you and I talked about this, the last, kind of the global financial crisis, and just the similarities and the differences. I think the similarity here is that consumers feel wealthier between rising home prices and the stock market, but also, right, technology is at a whole different place than we were, and this ability to engage with the customer, but like even in a physical setting. I don't know what you're thinking.
No, I think that's an excellent evolution of where we've been. What we did in the last year is we really think about the one thing our centers have is space. How do we utilize the space to really serve the consumer? And so it's always been inside in common areas, and it's operated in the way that we've all traditionally experienced. In the last year, we realized our space is agile. So as soon as we had to close, we had restrictions on occupancy inside the centers, we took the food court tables and flipped them to the parking lot to create socially distanced seating. So our dining and food services could still operate. They could still serve consumers in a way that made everybody feel good and safe, and we could be together. We hosted drive-in movies. We hosted concerts that had sponsorships with our specialty brands within the center. So you still can engage in a hot topic concert series. You're just doing it in your car. So it's that agility to really think about how do we use that space to bring consumers together in the way that makes them feel really comfortable. That's a strategy that we've held for many, many years. It just changes as to where consumer needs are going. So I love your idea with holiday, because I think the first step came in 2020, in which we partnered with Spotholder to basically, it is an app that allows you to reserve space in a line, because we knew holiday was going to be tough. We had to really abide by our occupancy restrictions, but we wanted to give consumers a really great shopping experiences, and the retail brands needed to help in doing that as well. How could you make that trip to the center really meaningful and not just waiting in line? So this sort of line queuing was a great way to make your appointment. It really managed time. It allowed the retail brands to give a really good experience because they could actually plan and have the associates inside the store because they could tell like how many people were coming through, how do we service them, how do we deliver that really great experience. So I think as we were starting to add services like that were need-based to really help facilitate our business in a season, now we have this opportunity to really grow into that and think about how do those services really elevate and allow that engagement across brands, which brings a benefit to the retailers as well, because everybody kind of does better when you have that consumer who's coming in, they're shopping across multiple brands, and you're really getting a higher share because they're there to really do the majority of their shopping. That's a benefit to multiple retailers inside the center, and we want to facilitate that. So I think it becomes a partnership of what are those opportunities across the retailer's value chain? Where do they need that partnership in which we can come in, utilize our space, and utilize what we do to really enable them to realize value. At the same time, it's serving the needs of the consumer that these brands know what the consumer wants. They understand that experience.
Well, I think that's this whole idea that almost right the center, the kind of retailer knows you, has a relationship with you, and that extends almost right like beyond loyalty. And this it's really interesting. Once again, shopping outside the U.S. oftentimes right if you spend a certain amount, right, the center will there are different kind of thresholds, and you'll get a gift while you're shopping, right? You'll go to the customer service desk. And to me, right, all these customers feel like they're in this together, right? And then it's funny, right, when you're in line to pick up your gift, everyone's literally pulling out of their bags what they bought. And I think it's almost this idea that right, this kind of center is right, they're taking care of us, they're kind of rewarding us for our spend. I mean, different retailers have done this, right? If you spend throughout the store, you gather all your receipts and you go and they'll give you kind of $50 towards your next purchase or something like that. But this idea that you're actually getting kind of, and it goes back to this memory making almost, a kind of, and it's something that's of value. And I do think that there's something to be said in terms of how we kind of pull it all together. And, whether we have, I'm all about festivals, right? Last year, Coresight started the 10/10 shopping festival, and we had many, actually, in a very short period, right? We put it together in 6 weeks, so it was short. But we had many of the, kind of landlords participate, and it really just drove this sense of fun and excitement and engagement. And there was a charitable aspect to it, and so everyone felt that they were all working together for good, right? And that I think right now, everyone wants to know how can they help, how can they give back, how can they work together, and having kind of the once again the mall as this platform to assist with that. I think it's. We're going into holiday is not that far away, right? Which is a season where consumers really think about giving back. We've got Earth Day coming up in April. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities to leverage this and to educate consumers, but to also have them feel like they've got a partner there, right? Whether it's, kind of a virtual voice assistant while they're shopping or kind of a video chat. And I think we're just getting started, right?
Absolutely. I love some of this information that you guys are sharing specifically around technology as a catalyst for consumer engagement, and our centers as a community hub, and really listening to consumer need and want to partake in something bigger than themselves. We spoke a little bit about this in terms of what we're predicting for the future of consumer spend for holiday, but I'd like to dive into that a little bit more if we can. This is an era where we're all grasping for information and trying to look to historical data to figure out, okay, what's next? Where are consumers going? Where are their purchases and dollars going to go? Deborah or Meredith, could we dive into consumer behavior of the future a bit more?
I think it's connected, Meredith. I mean, I think it's everyone connecting with each other and having these shared experiences. And if I can be in one location and I'm sharing my, experience with somebody in my family, one of my friends, and right, I think it goes back to, right, oh, hey, we're going to be traveling together this holiday season. I'm going to buy this outfit. Should I get the same for you type of thing, right? I mean, this whole we're seeing more and more of that, or right, people are shopping together in different geos. and that there's this kind of sense of togetherness, even even if distanced. And I feel like the this opportunity, Hannah, I think you talked about it, right? How can we do kind of more in these centers, right? I mean, I think we continue to see, right, the tenants change, right? Because the consumers want it, right? They want to be able to do everything in one location, right? I mean, it's the idea of like one-stop shop, right? I'm going to be at the mall for 3, 4, 5 hours. I'm going to eat. I'm going to get my prescriptions. I'm going to, kind of get my footwear. I'm going to get, and I think that this idea that it's not, I guess the biggest message I feel like, even though we still have more conversation time, is that it's not transactional anymore, right? It's more of a relationship. And I feel like that's where the kind of landlord, the change that we've seen, and implementing some of this kind of mall wide or center wide technology also has a big hand in that.
We look at we think a lot about curation first at Brookfield. So that curation is the key as we understand how are consumers behaving, what are their wants and needs, I think a lot about it as how does she spend her day from 9 to 9? And then how do we create that and make that possible across the Brookfield Center? So to your point, Deb, we've thought a lot about those uses. Like, what are the uses? What are those services that are needed within a center? What are those kind of delights and indulgences that should be part? It's not so transactional now as I only go to a mall because I need to buy a white t-shirt. I need to pick up my groceries. I am going to meet a friend for lunch. I'm going to take my Soul Cycle class. Like, whatever that looks like, even to the point of now wellness, right? You're going to see medical clinics coming into retail centers and being there as a service, because that's going to be so top of mind for us as we continue to move forward. We all want to stay healthy. So how are we really thinking about that lifestyle of a consumer, not lifestyle from what she just wears, because I think that's kind of where we were of the old model, but truly how he or she really spends their time and bring those uses in. And if we can really curate that right mix and that right merchandise and service offering, then allowing that connection becomes something that feels real and authentic to the consumer, because already the shopper's coming in, here's the services and stores that I want. And then now how do we start to create and build that connection across the entire property? To your point, really understanding how they are behaving once they are inside the center and building sort of rewards for that and services of value. So we really look a lot at Wi-Fi analytics. We do like to look across the center and start to understand how is a consumer moving through, what's the path to purchase, and really what's kind of surprising to us, because I think we all have our insights of what we believe a consumer does once he or she steps on a property to what's really happening and how does that change. So this is where I get very excited about where data can actually help in really understanding where are these behaviors going, how do we start to see nuances from market to market that we can share with our retail brands, and then how can the retail brands get enabled to have a conversation with that consumer that becomes more personalized. And I think that's really where we can be a powerful partner in that, is maybe we don't need to drive that interaction between the consumer and the retailers, but we can empower it and enable it so it better serves for a real authentic experience.
I think wellness is absolutely key. And I mean, hey, going back to when I was a kid and you used to see like the mall walkers, right? So, I mean, I still have, but I think it goes back to, right, if I can understand what to buy at the grocery store, what do I need to do in terms of, what are the right shoes for me? What is the right kind of athletic apparel? And then if I've got kind of my medical needs met, right, like all in one location, I mean, hey, we've got an aging population, right? I mean, and I also think that the pandemic has changed how we think about taking care of our own health. So even, right, if I could sit down with somebody, or if one could sit down with somebody and say, hey, right, like I know that some of the, kind of Vitamin Shop had done like a great job of this in terms of, right, having like an hour once a week to sit down and like inform consumers about, right, like what is, right, like, what is the kind of, what do you use this particular vitamin for? How do you make like the healthiest smoothie? Those types of, right, which is much bigger, right? And so even if there were like weekly wellness topics, right? I mean, there's so much to cover and there's so many interesting things that I think we all want to know more about. And once again, being able to do that in like a center, I think is, it makes it easy and simple, and everyone's kind of there to do it together. And right, from a consumer perspective, right, if I can go and get some of that advice maybe for free, then I can spend more on my vitamins or whatever it might be. And I just I think that that's really critical. And one other thing, Meredith, I wanted to address that you brought up is we had seen, spending time in Japan, it was fascinating. There were all these, like in the centers, women getting their hair done right before they went out on Saturday nights and getting their makeup done. And they were, these services were provided by the companies selling kind of like, the flat irons and the hair dryers and whatnot. And so, but the service was all free. And they obviously saw the return on that. And I just think that there's this, other ways for retailers to think about the services that they offer, which ultimately will kind of drive sales, not necessarily the flip. And so I just think there's so much that we can learn as we kind of not only look outside of our borders, but also as we think about, right, this, it's really like this new consumer, right? I mean, they have really changed, and what they want, I think they're much more, I think they're much more compassionate, but demanding at the same time, because there is an assumption, right, that you've got my data, or I'm giving you permission to have it, and therefore I want a more customized experience to me. And that, I think, it's only going forward. I don't think that's going to change.
I just got so excited by everything you were saying. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I agree with you. I think consumers are really thirsty. They want to be educated, right? Because that how we communicate and the knowledge we share with our friends, there's real influence in that. And that's such a key driver. So how can our centers and our retailers really come together to bring that space? It's like, we will give you this education. We will share with you. You have these brands that are experts in their own area, and they're going to share with you what they know. But then that's really a starting point, because I think we're oftentimes looking at your phone, as like a bit of a competitor, but it really isn't. The phone comes to life inside a center in this way. It allows you to connect with that expert at that brand, even if it's Vitamin Shop. Now you can start to build a connection where you can have that dialogue with the brand itself and talk to this person, or be sent like, here's the latest and greatest. Here's that right add-on. Here's how you should be thinking about the next evolution of your wellness journey. I think there's so much opportunity to really create this whole it's a relationship.
Well, think about this idea right around, I mean, you got me so excited as well. Imagine if there's like Brookfield Pay, right? And I can keep track of like, I bought this great pair of like, workout pants the last time. I don't remember which store I bought them in or where. And if it's all there and the information is easily accessible, but then like, think about if, right, you're buying like, you buy pants to a suit and the jacket goes on sale. Is there a way for, kind of through that, Brookfield Pay or the app to communicate directly with you, the consumer? I just think that, we're still at such our early innings, but, a lot can happen between now and holiday. And that's where I think, and everyone's willing to kind of try something new for holiday 21, right?
That's what I think is getting exciting too. We're all looking to try those new experiences. And this is a great year for it, because consumers are really well positioned. I think oftentimes in the past, there'd be a great idea, but maybe we were a little too early, or consumer behavior shifted because we couldn't quite move fast enough. I think we're at such a critical point where you have a willing consumer that's open. You have brands, both landlords and tenants, that really want to try. So I'm super excited, because this seems to be the year that we're truly going to see that next step in the evolution, and really kind of reimagine what should a shopping experience be. It's a fun time to be in this industry right now.
That's a great point, Meredith. There's so much excitement about what things could be. As we're coming to the end of our time, I'd like to ask sort of a fun question, and have each of you put on your consumer hat for a second. As things are rolling back and our centers are open. Deborah, I know you spoke to this amazing human connection that you had with Dick's Sporting Goods, and that the service that this brand provided created a whole experience for you. Once stores started reopening, what was your first store to go back to and why? What were you most excited to experience in real life again?
I went to the mall to eat. I have to be honest. I was like, and I think I visited many, I was like, it was like all these things. I was like, oh my gosh, I've like my own cooking is just not something you want to be eating. And I was like, this is like the best. And then I feel like I just stood in the middle of the center and just like absorbed it all. Like I was grateful. Like that is the one word I would say is like, I was emotional. I was grateful that we were all there and we were healthy and that we were all able to be together. And then just also too, I mean, for those of you who know me, I'm an extreme extrovert. And so just like I need to be around other people. And I was like, this is like I feel like I now have like my Wonder Woman cape on, right? Because I can really kind of pull all this energy from everybody. And you could just see, right? Everyone went out of their way and there was an engagement with people, right? Like I saw somebody drop like a credit card or something and like literally 5 people ran over to pick it up for this person. And I was like, you know what? That's what this is all about. That's like why we're all here together in the center is to support each other, to have fun and, to really kind of, find items that like surprise and delight us. And to Meredith's point, right, from a wellness perspective, right, take better care of ourselves. I mean, to get out there, I remember like tracking like my steps and I was like, wow, this is great. And, the weather wasn't perfect that day either. So I think for me, it was the food. And ultimately, everybody was walking out of there with, and I think there was this other thing too, is that consumers wanted to support the brands, right? So you saw people really shopping. I mean, once again, on like the 10/10 shopping festival we put together, I was blown away at like this idea, right? I mean, hey, we ended up being a bit short of inventory for holidays because everybody got out there and supported retail, right? I mean, that was the ultimate, kind of call. And so I think it's, and I think that having these events, these festivals that were, the Brookfield starts to get known for, right? Like in this center on this date, right? We're going to have a spring festival. And then on this, we're going to have like, whether it's July 4th or back to school or whatever we want to call it, it can be completely made up, but that we're going to celebrate each other and we're going to do it like, through shopping because it does make us feel good. And we're going to find things that are important and meaningful to us. And I think that we're going to have for some time. So there's also a sustainability aspect there is to find these products that we truly love and that we're going to have and take great care of. I don't know, Meredith, what about you? I
think you really, you hit on the head when you said shopping is fun. And that's what I really loved. My similar experience, I went to Oak Brook Center and just the camaraderie that all the consumers felt. Like I was visiting various stores and everybody's so happy to be there. And it was so communal. We were all very conversational. It's one of the first times in so long that you could go into an area with complete strangers and we're all like, aren't you excited to be here? I'm so excited to be here. Isn't this wonderful? And it just felt joyous to be in the center that day. And, for myself, I'm a very loyal Nordstrom consumer, and I went back.
We don't know, Meredith.
Yes, I'm not shy about that. A little biased, but I did go back into my Nordstrom store and saw all.
And they cheered. They cheered.
Well, it was like seeing family again. And, it's like we haven't seen our family for a long time. When I go in and they're not just employees of Nordstrom, they're my friends. Like I spend a lot of time with them. We have these great occasions and it felt like you're back with your family and friends. And that's what shopping in person and in stores really is. It's such a usually a joyous occasion or celebratory, or in some way it's just so human and it brings us together to have those very touching moments. So I think that's what's been the most exciting return for me personally, going back into stores, is that level of camaraderie that we're all feeling right now.
Well, the other thing, actually, Hannah, it's a really good point, is I've seen store managers on the floor much more and engaging not only with their associates, but with customers. And you can tell, I mean, they're joyous, right? That everybody's back and that everything is, and I've engaged with them in conversation as one does as an analyst and trying to, learn more. And many of them talked about, right, like when stores were closed, how they were still taking care of the customers and, right, like moving inventory around. And they all have, right, like these really interesting stories. And I think, and they want to share them, right? I mean, that's also, right, like what did they do during the pandemic? How did they still serve customers? How did right, holiday 20 happen, right? How did back to school happen? And I think having hearing those stories, right? Like it goes back to like we all felt like we were in it together. And then you just realize how much the retailers really kind of like picked all of us up and helped us move forward during some challenging times.
I certainly agree. I think that our retail community really proved to be some heroes of the pandemic, especially when they were used as a service to communities. And I can certainly resonate with that human connection, this togetherness and partnership that we've all been craving. And I'm proud to work for a company that embodies that in what we do. Our time is coming to a close, but Deborah, I just wanted to thank you so much for lending your industry expertise and conversation to us today. And Meredith, as always, your strategic insights always bring understanding to a complex retail environment. Thank you both. And to our audience,
thank you.
To our audience, thank you for tuning in to our second installment of Voice of the Retail Revolution. For more content about the future of brick and mortar and past webinar events and how Brookfield Properties is revolutionizing retail, visit revolutionizeretail.com. Have a great day.